Okay, good afternoon, everyone. This is going to be a session that is going to be a collective session. As you see on the screen, there is Alemayehu Geletu. I'll say a word about him in a second. But before I do so, there is also Professor Kaleab Baye, who's here, a nutritionist, a professor of food science and nutrition here at Addis Ababa University, with whom I've had the pleasure to get some work started within IPORA, and also to jointly supervise very brilliant PhD students that I'm going to talk about in a second. So what we want to present to you today is called the Atlas of Food Security and Nutrition, and this is the launch. We've been waiting to launch it, to give it the visibility, and today is the day, Alemayehu, so we'll remember that day. This is a story, the story of this atlas is a true IPORA story. It starts from the very beginning of IPORA, when one of the research theme was, let's think about food security, agriculture, economics, all the way up to nutrition. And then people who didn't know each other, Kaleab Baye, myself, and a few others, decided that maybe to get this started, we can try and come up with some tools. And one of the tools we thought about was to say, how about we try and bring some data all together, put it in a way that is informative to then maybe interact with policymakers and together decide, oh, this is interesting, maybe there is something we can explain here, and here there is something we cannot explain, and maybe that's worth doing research. And that's how we started with this idea. And so we said, okay, let's gear up, let's get some tools. It's an IPORA story because it's truly interdisciplinary. As I said, Kaleab is from nutrition science. Renaud Becquet was also associated from the beginning to this with in public health, myself in economics, and then we found a great candidate to help us do this as part of his PhD, who comes essentially from biostatistics. So that tells you that with different disciplines we can come up with different things. All right, so let me move on with this. So the first thing to know about this atlas is this picture, which I'm not asking you to read at all. It's called a food systems framework. Maybe some of you have seen it in the past. This food system framework, what are they? They're a way to link all food system components, some say from farm to fork, but I was actually at FAO recently, and someone rightly said, 30% of the population doesn't use a fork. We should change that name. So let's say from plot to mouse. And so from plot to mouse, you have drivers of, maybe production into plots. You can have drivers of whether markets function, etc. Then you have different components of the food system, the food supply, the food environment, the individual factors, and all of that gets to outcomes. Are people food secure? But beyond that, do they have a healthy diet? And how does that translate in things that we can eventually measure? Stunting, cognitive development, and in general well-being. So it's a good promise. Food system framework is about putting all this together. It started to get traction in the late 90s, let's say. It became official in early 2000 through the UN Committee on Food Security, but it's really early 2021. I think that the UN Food System Summit really put it up to front. And so UN agencies started to work with countries to say, let's document all of these 180, 200 now. Okay, 200. Okay, so it's increasing by the day, so that there's 280 indicators now. And so in the end, the idea, there is a website that documents all of this. It's called the Food Systems Dashboard, and you see that a lot of countries are using it now. So this map is interesting because it helps shift the thinking from sectoral silos to systemic reasoning about food security. It also has the promise, the food system framework has the promise to improve targeting of policies. Spatial targeting, for instance, but sometimes targeting one policy lever to say, well, I can't do every policy in the world. If there is one thing that if I push that button, it's going to have a larger impact, which button is it? Okay, so it's a lot about targeting geographically, targeting, policy targeting, which policy instruments. But what you see on this map is that all of these countries, it's very interesting because we can compare them. Obviously, you see that food security is stunting in this map of children under 5 has a much higher prevalence in sub-Saharan Africa. It's just cross-country comparison. And essentially what you see is that there is only one value for this indicator per country. And that's not exactly what we were interested in. I should say also that who produces those maps, it's typical actors such as the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, the high-level panel on food security of the UN as well, some research organizations such as IFPRI, Oxford, etc., etc. What's important, however, is that one of these organizations, this is FAO, also has this map, and this is the agroecology of Ethiopia. And so at the same time that FAO produce food system framework indicators that are either at the national or regional state level, that is, at the time there were 12 in Ethiopia. At the same time, FAO tells us there are 26 agroecologies in the country, and they're quite spread all around. The most precise estimate of the food system framework that we have is at, as I said, the sub-regional level. So let's take one of these regional states. For instance, Oromia. Oromia is an extremely large state in Ethiopia. It's just about where we are. And so this is Oromia. And what you see is that the food system framework only has one value for stunting, one value for, I don't know, the share of farmers that produce cereals, one value for what was the rain like in the past meher season, etc. For the entire region. Yet what you see is that agroecology is actually quite diverse. So when we started thinking about this with Kaleab, we said, can we do better? To do something better than to do better than that, what you would need is data, but you would need a huge amount of data. And Ethiopia has something a bit particular. For those of us that have been working, living, and doing lots of research in Ethiopia for a long time, this is a gold mine for good quality data. This table shows you that each row is a typical survey. So the first one is the DHS, the Demographic and Health Surveys, supported by USAID at the time. And you see that in Ethiopia, there was one round in 2011, another one in 2016, another one in 2019. And everything you want to know about health and nutrition, you can find there. The WMS, similar. You can get indication of welfare services and nutrition. I'm not going to go through all of them, but the World Bank LSMS data is quite important. And if you go towards the bottom part, the ACT sample survey are every year, and sometimes they're even census, such as this year actually. The reason why these exist is because there is a strong commitment to some agencies to produce the highest possible quality data and to ensure that it is made available to researchers like us. And that's why I want to also pay a tribute to the institution without which this data would not exist. And today it is called the Ethiopian Statistical Service. And not too long ago it was called the Central Statistical Agency. And the Director General of the Central Statistical Agency for much of this period, so the person to which we owe all this data is right here, is Ato Biratu, who's part of our team here in IPORA, part of our team in some of our projects, and thanks to whom this work is made available. So that's why, sorry for this long introduction, but this is an IPORA project, and we're very proud of it along those lines. So our aim, and I'm going to pass the floor to the mic to Alemayehu in a second, our aim is the following. See, the first map on the left is Ethiopia, national boundary, kind of like what the map I show you, cross-country map, okay? So we could have an indicator, let's say stunting, okay? How about, okay, we'd have one value, right? Now, if the next map is called regional states of Ethiopia, it's difficult to have an up-to-date map because it keeps on evolving a little bit, but let's say that for much of the period we're looking at, there's the regional states were such, and so maybe you could say, you know, stunting is about 45% in Ethiopia, but how about we go heterogeneity, and we see, wow, that's interesting, because you see there is this regional state in blue called Gambela. And Gambela only has 20% stunting, and it's not a very rich place, by the way. Huh? It's kind of remote, kind of disconnected in many aspects, etc. Then you can look at the north, the Tigrayan, the Tigray, for instance, or Afar region, and you say, oh, it's higher than maybe in the south. So there is heterogeneity, right? Okay, can we go deeper about stunting? How about that? By the way, these are real data that Alemayehu is going to show you how we do it. This is zonal level. In Ethiopia, how many zones do we have, Alemayehu? About 100 zones, okay? So 12 regions, 100 zones, all right? And it's interesting because when we were looking at the northern part, there is heterogeneity, actually. It means that there should be different policies, even within Wolo, within Tigray, etc., right? Okay, how about if we could go deeper? How many woredas are there in Ethiopia? Okay, so that's what we get. And all of this would be useless if we would always get the same yellow color to start with. But what we see is that that's not the case. This initial average hides a lot of heterogeneity. Eventually, you could say, well, can we go even deeper? We're going to take you all the way here, which is a 5 by 5 kilometer cell, to try and say and describe what's happening in Ethiopia. So I'm done for my introduction. I just want to remind you of this team. Professor Kaleab Baye, Ato Biratu, without whom all of this would not be possible, and I'm going to give the floor to our brilliant students, Alemayehu Geletu, to tell you how we do this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tanguy. As you have seen, we have done a lot of things to come up with a lower administrative level estimates, which is very relevant. So the question is, we know we have a lot of surveys. Why don't we do it before? We know our national surveys have always representative at national level or at regional level, or sometimes between urban and rural. When we come to the method, the first thing what we have done was we have compiled data from different sources. Thanks to CSCA, currently Ethiopian Statistical Services, Ethiopian Public Health Institutes, and others. We have tried to compile every possible data which can be linked to the food system framework or indicator which are able to be found on the food system. Then we have tried to connect with the geolocation of the clusters where the survey estimates are collected. The next thing, parallelly, we have also do some spatial covariates. As Tanguy showed you at the framework, we have found a lot of spatial covariates from different sources, from satellite, remote sensing. We have also parallelly compiled those informations for around 13 years, both the survey and the data. Then we have estimated each indicators which is possible from the food system framework. During that, we need to harmonize each indicator. For example, sometimes some indicators might be measured in different ways. For example, let's say previously food security may be measured using the HFAS, nowadays it's changed to the FIAS. So to construct those things, we need to know exactly how the survey collects the data. So we need to estimate those indicators based on the harmonized indicator definition, which is already on the food system dashboard, as well as the high-level panel experts for nutrition and food security and nutrition website. Also, there is a document. So the same variable was collected in the same year. For example, let's say in 2016, ESS have conducted 3 national surveys. the demographic and survey, the living standard measurement survey, the socio-economic survey, additionally the welfare monitoring survey. Both three are collected in 2016 by CSA. Those three surveys have measured stunting, which is measured based on height for age. They have measured the height of the child and the age of the child. Then they use the standardized WHO 2006 definition. Then they estimate the proportion of children, the height for age Z-score below -2. You see, we have three data. As you can see, the prevalence, there is some variability. Is a problem of design because the indicator is the same, because they define the indicator the same, but there is some uncertainty, or when we do the confidence interval for each regions, we might get the same result. There might not be a significant difference, but in terms of precision, we lose a lot of precision here. So what do we do? This is an example only for stunting. We do for a lot of indicators in this way. Then combining the three indicators, the three surveys, and estimate stunting. So in that case, we will get a precise estimate, which also help us to get a better estimates for our local administrative or the high resolution spatial estimates. Then we have compiled data, we have linked our data with a geospatial covariate, then geolocalized each surveys and each clusters. Finally, we come up with 142 food system indicators out of 218. Nowadays, the number of indicators are going increase and increase. As you can see there, driver, we have constructed 8 drivers indicators out of 22. Sometimes some of the indicators are not able to be estimated at a regional or local level. So we are not able to get a lower level estimate for those indicators. For example, having some policy cannot be implemented, cannot be for some specific woreda or for some specific kabale or lower administrative zone. So by processing all those things, we come up with indicators, 144 indicators, along with the spatial covariates, and all the indicators are localized, harmonized, and combined in one data frame for 13 years, both the spatial and our data sets that Tanguy showed you before, from all those data, the DHS, LSMS, welfare monitoring, actual sample survey, and others. So how we do those lower level administrative map? Now we know the process, we have the data, we combine, harmonized, we do everything, then we come up a cluster level estimate for all 144 indicators. Next, this is all the process we follow, starting from data collection to getting a 5 kilometer by 5 kilometer high resolution estimate of 122 indicators. These are the one we modeled through our survey data. We have another 27 or 30 indicators we have constructed from the OpenStreetMap, other spatial covariates, from different spatial sources, WorldPap, and others. Even the SPAM, which is a lot of people have been documented a lot of spatial covariates, which are mostly available at online. Then, here, as you can see on the second part, we have compiled all the indicators. We have harmonized. We have a data frame, a space-time data frame, in both at a survey data points as well as the Ethiopian at a grid level. Then we know that now at time artificial intelligence and machine learning are doing a great job in predicting a lot of things, including a lot of spatial things and other survey-based or a lot of things. So why do we do a different machine learning algorithm to predict our food system indicators, those who are constructed from the survey? So we use the strings of each machine learning algorithm. For example, random forest will be very good in handling high interactions. The generalized additive model is good in capturing nonlinear relationship. The lasso, range, elastic net are a good regularized linear regression model. They capture a linear trend very well. So we will do a machine learning algorithm, 7, then come up with an estimate of each food system indicators. So which one do we use? Rather than using those individual machine learning algorithms, why don't we put those indicators to our model-based geostatistics, a Bayesian modeling? The Bayesian modeling here have our model predicts 45% for the out of sample. That's the thing. Here we do a more thing. For each indicator and estimate, we will have a 95% confidence interval at grid level. So we will combine those machine learning algorithm into our Bayesian model and predict using those Bayesian model. We have predicted a 5 by 5 kilometer of indicator for 100 to 122 indicators. In Ethiopia, in Addis, we'll have a lot of grids. So we will have an estimate in each grid of the country. So whenever we want to aggregate those grids into a different level, administrative levels. That's why Tanguy showed you before. So we do all these things. What's the relevance of these things? Is it able to put these things for the policymakers? For example, if you see when someone gives you a map, a Wereda level estimate map, what did you do with it? Sometimes you will not know exactly which Wereda is which. For example, those who know, who didn't know the Weredas or the administrative level very well. To do that, the Atlas output, we have changed the Atlas output to a decision tool, which means we have developed a dashboard which can be very interesting and will show the overall the food system. Maybe let me show you. This is the food system dashboard. The first thing what you want to know is, for example, you would like to know the prevalence, at administrative level 1, you want an estimate of administrative level 1, let's say at regional level. Then, from the food system framework, you have a lot of domains, the drivers, the food, the components, the major food system components, which are the food supply, the food environment, the individual factor, the food security. Select your domain here, any domain, let's say from driver. From driver, you will have a lot of indicators. For now, only we have developed 2 indicators for driver. The other 6 or 7 are from spatial coverage. We will incorporate them here. Here, let's say the proportion of population living less than 2.15 per day by 2017 PPP USD. Then we can select the year. We have a lot of years here. For example, let's say start with 22. Then we will have an estimate. It's a statistics, which you can find a mean estimate, a lower bound, and the upper bound. Then generate the map. You see? Now you can see the proportion of populations across region. When you scroll here, you will get the region along with the estimates. Over here, you will see what does this indicator mean in details. Region Tigray would like to know which zones or which part of the country they want to allocate resource. So they want to know the prevalence at a zonal level, right? So in that case, the only thing what you have to do is change the administrative to zone. Then the same driver, the same indicator, the same year, then you will generate map. You see how much it varies? As you can see, there are, even within region, there are zones which the prevalence is very high, which is very low. So even within the zone, you want to know which warada are most prevalent in terms of poverty. So some government or other organization would like to allocate some resources. So you need to know which warada should we select from this zone or from that zone. In that case, you need to know, you come up with this dashboard, and you can select whatever you want. Okay, next let's go to at a warada level. Then generate map. This is a warada level estimate, the proportion of population living below 2.15. You see how much it varies. By 5, the one I showed you before. For each grid, we have an estimate of each food system, 102 food system indicators. What this food system dashboard also have added, for example, let's go up and select let's say at zone level, the same indicators and generate map. Then, if you want to know how in my warada or in my region, in my zone, how the proportion of population below poverty line goes, or the trend for that specific indicator, the only thing what you have to do is only click the thing, and you will see the estimates over time plus for that specific year. Here you will find the specific year of the estimates. Let's see another component of the food system, let's say food environment. Let's select indicators. We have a lot of indicators for food environment, more than 20, something like that. So the cost of healthy diet. In what year? Let's change this one for 2010. And let's generate the map. This is the cost of healthy diet in terms of 2017 PPT dollar. So we can do the same thing as we have done before. So when you click in any part, you will see how the cost of healthy diet goes over time for that specific warada. This is the food system dashboard, which is constructed for more than 144 indicators based on our knowledge, we didn't see such a comprehensive food system dashboard, even at a global or regional, even at lower level. So we didn't stop here. The next thing, so now we know at a granular or a lower level the estimates. Then what will be the next? What we do with these indicators? The next slide will be presented by Professor Kaleab. Yeah, you can use this one. Yeah. It's closed.
Okay, I hope it will come. Voilà. Okay, so Alemayehu has presented, the nitty-gritties of what was required to get to this level, and my job is to zoom out a bit and kind of say a bit about the implications of this work. But perhaps what Alemayehu has showed you is the possibility to have a granular estimate of multiple indicators of the food system, over 140 food system related indicators. But as you saw in the dashboard, you're kind of looking at one after the other. And what we want to do is we want this to be very useful to get us to understand some patterns. Okay, so here what you have is an example. So on the left side, you have minimum dietary diversity for children, which is an indicator that is a proxy of a diet quality for children. And you see that you have the eastern part of the country is a lot of red, where you have a low proportion of children meeting the minimum dietary diversity, but you can see that it's not homogeneous. Everywhere you have blue areas where you have a higher number of children meeting their minimum dietary diversity. So you would like to understand, okay, what could be behind this, etc. So another way would be, okay, now you bring in the cost of healthy diet on the side and try to see whether the patterns align, okay? So you would see that the cost of healthy diet is yellowish for the area where you have higher dietary diversity. So when you try to see the correlation of these, because these are cross-sectional surveys anyway, you can do Pearson correlation or Spearman correlation depending on the distribution of your data, then you say, okay, it's negatively correlated. That's what we tend to do. But then we can take it one step further, because when you indicators in a form of a spatial distribution of the correlation. And now you have a totally different understanding, because you have areas where the correlation is negative, all the blue areas, okay? But then you also have spots where the correlation is rather on the positive and in red. So what is related globally may not be necessarily related at a localized area. So this kind of analysis for the multiple indicators of the food system, we're able to run them and try to understand patterns behind what's causing this, and then understand, so dig deeper to understand the pattern. So national level estimates and correlation hide important local heterogeneity, and at worst, it can even be misleading. So this would have definitely, this is in mind of informing different interventions across time, and then dig deeper, understand the why. Why is it that it has functioned here and not there? Okay? The atlas could inform much needed qualitative assessments as well to make sense of patterns that emerge from the quantitative analysis. We see a pattern, but the understanding of the why requires a qualitative study to go there and interview people, try to understand what's going on in that specific locality. The atlas can support more targeted program and policy design by providing insights on which interventions matter, where, and under what local conditions. Now, you know that you may have, like in the health, it's quite common to have in the 90s, a recommendation for low and middle income countries. I want you to reevaluate those kind of recommendations in light of this. This is one country. When you go lower in administrative boundary, you can see quite a huge heterogeneity. So it's very important to reevaluate what we are doing in terms of interventions and programs to see if it's matching the local context so that it can have the needed impact. So as a summary, to our knowledge, as Alemayehu stated it, this is the first comprehensive and granular diagnostics of the food system in Ethiopia for sure, but we think that also probably in the world. I haven't seen, I work in the food system area, I haven't seen any that goes at 5 by 5 all the way to characterize all these food system level indicators. We illustrate how relationships vary in space. So relationship between different indicators of the food system vary in space, time, and context by breaking the silos between surveys and data. We have often recommended policymakers, break your silos, multi-sectoral coordination is needed. I think this is now time also to break the silos between our different surveys that are analyzed in a silo, whereas when brought together, it could give us a much more complete picture of what's happening. So we're breaking the silos in the survey and data space. We also took one step further to develop a user-friendly decision support tool that Alemayehu has showed you to ensure that it can be used to inform programs and policies. It's not just an academic exercise, it has to be used, and we wish that it would serve a purpose. And a key next step, as I said, is to integrate the policies and map and layer it to understand further what works and what doesn't. For policymakers, we hope that they use the atlas and dashboard to identify priority areas. They need to make a decision. And it's very difficult if you don't have all the elements in place. So, okay, you have X million of euros, but then you have 1,000 waradas, and you can only use it in certain aspect, then how do you choose? How do you choose that? It's a very difficult choice to make. But with this kind of tool, at least they get closer. And Obama said once, if you have 50% of the element, then you can start making decisions. So I think we're way more than that here. And so we hope that it can be used to inform programs, set priorities, and geographically target the way we implement programs so that it can have the much needed impact. For researchers, I think we can build on this platform to examine food system relationships more deeply and to integrate policy and intervention layers across space and time again. Strengthen collaboration between researchers and policymakers to improve interventions, contextual interpretation, as well as policy relevance. And I think we can say today that our team is now ready. Through this 2-3 years we've been building this, that we are ready to do similar work for African countries in support of their food system transformation if they need it. Making sure that realities are not lost at each step of data aggregation. Each step of data aggregation, you go further away from the reality on the ground. And that's a step away from making the much needed impact. And so if after all this you tell me, so what? Okay, like, it's always good to personalize this, to think of a person. So I'm putting Tasfa here. Tasfa is a pregnant woman from rural Ethiopia. So you know that she needs adequate nutrition, food to support her needs, as well as her fetus need. So you need definitely agriculture, food market, etc. Adequate health care is also needed because she's a pregnant woman. She needs also that supplement, that much needed supplement, so health. Clean water for drinking and cooking, hygiene and sanitation, that's wash. Income to buy food and access markets, finance and livelihoods. So for TASFA, these are not separate ministries. They are not study topics from different disciplines, but rather a one lived reality. Okay, all at once, she's facing it. So if we're working to change her life, and she expects and hopes, and just one note here, Tasfa means hope in Amharic. Her name itself is hope. So she's hoping that her most educated members of the society address the multitude of challenges she and her family continue to face. She doesn't want us to think, okay, no, we don't do it this way here in our discipline, etc. No. That's a luxury. So the hope of Amal, also meaning the same in Moroccan lady, or Espérance from Côte d'Ivoire, I think is similar. Is so that those that can help through education and the like can support the change of their lives. So with that, again, let's not forget why we're working, why all this data has been crunched, and we hope that it will make an impact. Thank you. And so I would now like to call upon Mr. Biratu, as Tanguy greatly introduced. He was in charge of CSA back in the days where all these surveys were done, and we have the privilege to have him amongst us, and maybe he could say a few words.
Good afternoon, everybody. እንደምን ዋላችሁ? I have been working in Ethiopian Statistics Office, or the then Central Statistical Agency, when these data were collected. I know the detail about the data. Most of this data, DHS, Welfare Monitoring Survey, and World Bank's LSMS standard or living measurement standard surveys most of them are collected in a standalone survey method. Those surveys are not integrated, even though those surveys, 3 of them are done at the same year, not integrated, and most of them are cross-sectional, not longitudinal. So the dictionary even is difficult to link those surveys. I know that also especially during at the beginning of 2010, 12, 13, the household data were also not georeferenced. Most of them, I know at cluster level, the shape files are there. The recent one are, most of the sample households are georeferenced, but the previous ones were not. So you can imagine how difficult putting, merging, and integrating those surveys, putting it together, and to produce such kind of information. Really, I am very much happy to see putting all this together and producing such kind of very insightful results. And as a producer of the data, I'm also very, very much happy. And I encourage you, most of you also, to use such kind of data to produce such kind of very insightful information which can easily be changed into actionable policies. Most of the National Statistics Office, they produce indicators, descriptive statistics, not the, doing a kind of this in-depth analysis. I know most of them are the result indicators are designed to produce result at higher level, at regional level, and in some cases, agricultural sample survey at zonal level, unless otherwise at country level. But what we saw here is a more disaggregated level, and also that everybody can easily take action, and also policymakers also can use such kind of data. And thank you very much, all the researchers, and I'm happy to see such kind of products. And also for the Statistics Office, this one also give us a kind of a lesson how to design surveys in the future to make it more georeferenced and also integrated and putting a data set together as much as possible. Thank you very much.
So I suggest, Ato Biratu, Kaleab, Alemayehu, that you take the chairs, and I will chair the session for question and answers. Do you want to? Yes, please. Ato Biratu. Let me, before I give you the floor to you all, I'm sure you have comments, suggestions, comments, critics maybe. Kaleab said we're ready to push this elsewhere. One of the things that we've been a bit picky with Alemayehu is to say anything you do, if you need to change a letter in the name of a woreda somewhere, if you need to change a digit 5, a number of 5 digits after the comma, you do it by a code. We code everything. And so all of this is code-based, which means that, we mentioned it in a previous session, once it's done, once it's coded once, it's only a matter of applying it elsewhere. And a lot of artificial intelligence can be used for that. So we're ready to push it elsewhere as long as there is good data. We've done a meeting in Côte d'Ivoire already. We've discussed it in Morocco. We're ready to talk about it in Zambia. Why not? Or elsewhere, but so let me just open the floor. Any questions, suggestions, critics? Yes. One here, then one here, and then one here. So we have. Okay. I'm going to call countries. So let's start by the back. Let's start by Zambia.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, the investigators, for giving us tremendous work. I think the results speaks for itself, and the amount of data that have gone into that work also speaks for the amount of effort that you have put in. I got excited pretty much that I think there's Professor Baye there, so I was actually thinking, did you just remove S to have Bays instead of Baye? And I'm thinking maybe that's the reason why our hardworking colleague even preferred the Bayesian approach. But in a serious manner, the question is, looking at the level of data that you have and the computational cost that should have gotten into doing this, what engine did you use? Is it based on the sampling based? Is it the deterministic approach? We have the Laplace approximation, or we do have the sampling based that probably everyone is running away from. If whichever engine or estimation procedure used, the other question would be, what do you think would be the limitation given the great work that you have done, because we surely need to replicate this to other settings. The final comment relates to, we've been using survey parameters for the purposes of improving the precision structure, because the data that is coming from other systems, the routine systems, as you know, it's probably obviously underestimates. And we want to use the survey parameters to recalibrate and improve the precision to make it representativeness. In your case, you went further down. To what extent do you think the survey parameters that should have come from the surveys that actually you had could have improved your estimation procedure?
Thank you. Let's take another two.
Thank you so much.
Quick questions.
Very interesting work. My question is, this is very interesting work. So but I know that it's very labor intensive. What are the plans in terms of updating this work? What are the plans in collecting future data set? And have you considered using artificial intelligence in terms of updating the models? Then, of course, you mentioned something very important when you are looking at the correlation. So I just wanted to sound this. It's very important. For policymakers, it's very important to put a disclaimer that they shouldn't use this for designing interventions, but it should be used as an indicator of where the problem is. When you come to designing interventions, now it comes to the correlations, but more improved correlations. So I think we were shown a very good example where on one side there's negative correlation and the other side positive correlation. So we need better correlations for that. Thank you.
For research sake, I mean, as researchers, we can keep on asking questions on whether or not this is defined well, etc. So that would allow us room to also improve things, the way things are defined, etc., depending on what we see from the patterns that we observe in different places. Potential use in the future would be also here you have for diet diversity, which is a proxy for diet quality in terms of nutrient intake. Then we have GDQS, which is about healthiness of the foods consumed, where you have points being deducted when you eat sugary foods, etc. So we try through a combination of indicators to get as close as to different dimensions of a healthy diet. It's not complete, but I think something to further improve as we move forward. But at least for now, all standardized, validated indicators have been integrated.
Okay, we're going to take another round. Maybe just, unless Ato Birato, you want to add something, or maybe let me ask you a question to you. As we said earlier, this is about getting a tool that helps us do research in a way that can connect with policymakers. As I said in introduction, the idea is to say, okay, let's put things on a map. There are things that make sense, and there are things that don't make sense. And then let's sit together with maybe, it could be Digital Green, a great NGO that Daniel is leading here in Ethiopia. It could be a Woreda level or zonal level administration. And then let's sit together and say, there is something weird in the data here. is it worthwhile? Do some research and then dig deeper. Do some qualitative, do some more surveys, do some etc. So it's more like, it's a tool that helps us do research in connection with policy. That's kind of the idea. It's not Gano, and we need to stop, and okay. And maybe the second point that Daniel has forgotten. No, because we have until 5:30, my friend. And Olivier.
Thanks. One question, I cannot remember your name, the gentleman who led the character, yeah. What's the cost of such a survey? What does it cost to run this type of surveys? And hence, can we, with what you've learned through those very precise surveys and using other sources of data and maybe AI, can we also avoid, repeating those surveys and relying on routine data? I know there is more and more interest for data science and using DHIS2 data collected by the ministries of health or other ministries. So it's a question about the practicalities, the cost of such surveys, and then what's the future for using this type of data?
Yeah, so my question is very sort of brief and simple. I mean, beside what Tanguy already said in terms of, how, I was asking myself, how can we combine this quantitative map, which is still a representation based on a number of indicators that have been chosen subjectively. Do you find the possibility or the need really to combine this with local level semi-structured interviews with local people? And this is not just, it's on one end because we also need to understand what are people's perceptions about food. Right, there's also the need to have a more qualitative understanding of this, but also when we talk about, you guys were talking about this idea of healthy diets. We have a sense of what healthy diets are from a general universalist sort of point of view, but we don't know whether for an Ethiopian a healthy diet means eating teff or not, right? And so unfortunately we cannot find many of these elements in a purely numeric
root cause and also, the outcomes that determine, food insecurity.
Okay, thanks. That's for the ambitious conclusion. Let's take this round and maybe.
Okay. Mine is maybe on survey cost issues, related issues. As you know, census or sample survey data collection is a very costly. In our country, especially in Ethiopia, even in addition to costly also, sometimes it's a very cumbersome, time-consuming, and even where there is, when you ask a household, sometimes the way they provide data is not in standard units. So it requires a kind of conversion into standard unit where there is no, as such, we don't have a diary. So we use the inquiry method or measurement kind of issue. Those ones are very, very costly and cumbersome and time-consuming. So, in the future, using the other method of data collection, using technology, AI, other issue, or Earth observation is going to be as a future way of the data collection, I presume so. Thank you.
Okay, regarding maybe is it possible to do the same survey for the future? That's why we develop these things. These things, for example, the only thing what we need to predict for 2025 is the satellite data from and some ground level data. If we get all those things, the data we learn from the past, we learn from the spatial covariance, and predict for 2025, which is a much more futuristic thing. Every year, we can have an estimate for each of 102 indicators or others once we have integrated all those things. And it will much. Then for this one, maybe sometimes we need to do some cross-validation things. We remove those years and estimate for the specific year and test whether how much the predictive accuracy offers that specific indicator, and we quantify, and we will do for the future years every year. It will be much more easy.
So maybe to the question of Daniel, we showed you one correlation of two indicators. That kind of exercise can be done across space and time for all the 144 indicators to see what's happening at a given location. So that's the power of it. So, I mean, this is really like an aerial view of what we presented is an aerial view. But when you get into the details, there are multiple use cases, including on, okay, if we don't have the resources as we used to, as we know the funding landscape is changing as we speak. So then, okay, what would be the core set of indicators that need to be collected absolutely, and what could be left out? Those kind of questions could be entertained probably with the kind of analysis we have, because you might have indicators that didn't really provide additional information, or that could be gathered from indirectly from another indicator. So if you're constrained by resources, they could be also used as a way to focus on what is important and what needs to be collected instead of having a very huge survey each time. So that could be one end use. The second, and I think to reflect to what Giovanni said, is it's always important to discuss on the outputs that come from this with experts on the ground, the communities, so supported with qualitative. And I can give you an example. I was working on vitamin A supplementation and trying to understand why coverage goes low. And then we found out that the strength of the health system is critical, okay? It's very clear. But then in Liberia, after 2021, things changed. And I went there and it's like, okay, we need to work on the health system. The closer you are to the health system, the likelihood you get your vitamin A supplementation. It makes sense. But they told me no. In 2021, after 2021, that's not what happened. Because of Ebola, nobody is getting near to the health center because they thought it was the place where you can get it. So the quantitative part could give you a correlation of some sort, but then you have like black swan kind of events, shocks, like Ebola, that change that pattern. So it's always important to talk to those who are involved on the ground, to support it with qualitative work, so that it gives you a full picture and you don't make a mistake.
Thank you very much. I think we'll stop here. Just first, congratulations, Alemayehu. This was a great launch. Let me just say one last word, which is, this all started by saying, let's make the most out of existing data. So this has not cost a cent in data. The idea is to say, in all of those countries we're looking at, there's lots of data. Can we make more out of it? Can it be useful? With all its limits, it's only one tool out of many. But in doing this, it means that if it has value, it means that the cost of data when it was is actually going down. So can we make more use? Can we make use? Can we transform this data existing? Anyway, thank you very much. We'll stop here.